All right, hi everybody. Welcome to your Project One feedback video. Had a lot of questions just kind of within the feedback areas that I wanted to just share with the class, go over some things that also I was noticing as people were doing the projects. So one of the first questions that, and I'm kind of going to go try to build from top to bottom here. One of the questions that I actually got a couple of times was, does the file name matter? To this point in the class, I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but really we work with a document called index.html. And some folks, first off in Project One, you change the name to like my project or my first project.html, which isn't the end of the world. Can you technically do it? Yes. One of the reasons, though, that we use the term index is based on hosting of your web page. So let's say, for instance, you go and use a server to host your website. Now, the server administrator, normally what they will do is they will actually set up the server to look for specific file names. So to give you a for instance here, like if I come over into my web browser here and I use google.com, notice I didn't have to put in any // as far as my web page goes. In comparison, if I come to the demo document here, notice I have project one feedback for the folder or container for this website, and then I have a / pointing to the index.html document. That's because I'm working locally. When you get onto a server space, however, the server will often be set up to look for specific terms and order of a file that it should just throw out to the user right as the user hits the website without typing the document name. The two biggies for HTML are index.html and then default.html. So to give you a for instance using Google, I could technically go one step further here, and let's see what happens when I type index.html. Notice I went to the same exact spot. But imagine for a second, like for every single web page we visit, like facebook.com, myccac.edu. Imagine you always had to remember to do a / and then a file document to target as far as an HTML document. We as humans, that's going to get really old really quick. And now at this point in web design and web use, users have been trained that we're not going to remember as far as having to drill down a bunch of folders and then put in specific file names. We're used to just typing things like google.com or www.google.com. So can you change the name of your project file? Technically, yes. It is better practice, though. The landing page, or what we call the home page of a website, this is going to be the page that your user sees first. Normally, we name that index. Could you switch to default? Yes. We use index in this class, though, because number one, the textbook uses index, but also number two, it's how I was taught. I was made aware of default, but you're going to see most of my files, I use index.html. So I wanted to give a little background and just answer that question for folks. So let's go ahead and move on here as far as our actual documents here. Another thing that I noticed, a couple of things. First off, I want to talk about an HTML document in general. One thing that I did start to see a little bit of a theme of here, where people were forgetting to not only add opening tags, but closing tags as well. Now, what I have here in this index.html document, this is back from chapter 2, as far as an HTML page structure. We used to call this the HTML skeleton. The tags that you see present here, as far as the opening and closing HTML as the main container to let the web browser know you're about to read HTML, the opening and closing header tag to store information regarding the HTML document, the title tag to show the title on the tab in the web browser, and then the body opening and closing tag that is meant to contain all other HTML display elements that show up in the main browser window to the user. What I noticed is folks were forgetting the HTML tags or they weren't putting body tags in. This is your main structure. The problem is yes, a lot of web browsers are going to make an assumption that this is actually what you meant. As you continue on in web design and development, especially when you get into things like more heavy CSS use, but also JavaScript, this is going to become crucial. So this is one of those areas, while yes, we can use references, you've got to memorize this. This is something that there is no play on. So even if it's a matter that, you have an index document that you copy and paste and then drag the index document into a new project, so you always have this starting structure to get started, that's fine. You can also turn it into a song as far as HTML head, title/title/head, body/body/HTML. That was something I used to chant to myself whenever I first started learning HTML. So again, no play on this, folks. This is something that, yes, your projects are going to function. In the long run, though, it is going to hurt you. And if you don't understand now why or what happened as far as future projects to make them break and not know to look at your HTML skeleton, that's where things are going to start to fall apart. Which leads me into this head tag area. I want to do a deep dive here for folks just so that you understand the point of the head and titles tags. So let's start with just the head. Head tags. It's a container tag. It contains information as far as the title the title tag, and that is what will appear on the tab in a browser. But also you can see the meta character set as far as what character set the document should be displayed in. UTF-8 is kind of a general common for alphanumerics, but other things that you will see here, your CSS document links, JavaScript file links, also meta documentation for search engine optimization. While we don't get into things like the JavaScript and the search engine optimization in this class, all of this information is stored in the head tag, and that's it. That's the only use of the head tag. What I think is happening is I noticed some folks, what they started doing is in their head tag here, they would start putting literally the header section of the web document in the header tag. So we would have like hello world. And the problem with this is if I come back over, it technically works. However, that is poor web development. No HTML tags that are meant to be displayed within the body of the web browser should ever be in the head tag, ever. So with that, that's where that body tag comes into play. Anything that you want to show up in this main box area that is displayed to your user, all of those tags go in here. And yes, as I save here and I refresh, it looks identical. Nothing changed. However, again, from a design and development standpoint, you've got to be sure that you have this set up correctly. Nothing, there is no tie to head and header. They are two separate elements that serve two different purposes and are structured differently. So head tag is just for storing information, storing links to external documents, web optimization, and other meta elements. The title tag. You can technically ignore this, though this is more poor user design. Title tag controls what is displayed up here on the tab of the web page. Can you technically ignore this? Yes. However, I don't know about the rest of you, but it's not uncommon for me whenever I'm working between, elements or doing research, it's not uncommon for me to have like 20 tabs open in a single web browser. That's where the title tag comes into play, where I can have like project 1, And now watch what happens on this tab here when I refresh. You see how the name changed up there. That's it. That's all the title tag does. So can you ignore it? Technically, yes. From a usability and user standpoint, should you? No. So those were some of the two big elements that I wanted to talk about. So again, HTML skeleton, you've got to have this. Head tag, no HTML tags that are meant to be displayed in the web browser window belong in this head tag. The only things that go in your head tag are meta tags, title, and links to external documents such as CSS documents. Which now brings me to one of the final items that I wanted to talk about here, is as far as CSS goes. One thing that I noticed, and it's good that folks were practicing this. So what I'm going to do over here is I am going to make a new file, and let me call this my css.css. And I'm just real quick, just so that we can see something change here. Color Rebecca purple, and then font size, let's make it something silly like 8ems. Okay. Now, what I noticed is good start for folks. So link rel type, we're saying a style sheet, and then we are saying the hypertext reference is my css.css. And let's go ahead and save, and now let's take a look. Okay, so we got some changes going on. By default, this is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with this. What I noticed though, and I think it came from one of the last videos, so I want to do a little bit more clarification here. So this is in Windows Explorer. This is kind of the reflection of what is happening in my project organization window in Atom and how it is affecting the overall container folder. If you recall from a previous video, I was talking about organization of your file types, how often we'll have a CSS folder to hold all of your CSS documents because you may have more than one. Also, too, you have JS folders for any JavaScript. You can have an IMG folder for your images. So what I think I started to see here was folks were coming in and they were choosing, let's make a new folder, and let's just call this folder CSS, which is fantastic that you're starting to practice this. But what I started to notice happening here is, let me go ahead and X out, is folks were dragging and dropping the CSS file into the CSS folder. Again, fantastic practice. I'm glad folks are trying this out. Coming back to index though, you had a relative link to my css.css, which meant, again, the relative links are in relationship to what current document are you on. So I'm on index here, but if I minimize the CSS folder, index is now looking around going, there's no my CSS file here. So what would happen then is in this document, you see how immediately it snapped back to just the default settings. So what you need to remember to do now is we need to give directions to the index document to find that CSS document, which this actually right here is a very easy change. What I am going to say in English to index.html is look in the CSS folder. When you look in the CSS folder, look for my css.css. And the way we do that is we just add CSS /. I like to think of the /, and I don't know if this will help folks, but I would always think of it like, because it's a /, and I'm kind of going forward here, so I'm saying in the CSS folder, go into it and look for my css.css. So now, if I go ahead and save, and I come back over and I refresh my page, it's now relinked the CSS document here. So that was a step I noticed folks were practicing this. Again, thumbs up. Awesome, you're practicing it. You just got to remember to follow back through back to the index page and change that href for your index document so that it knows where to find the CSS document. So those were some of the themes I saw in the project ones as far as both questions and feedback. So I hope this clarifies a little bit. Hopefully this adds a little bit more to your repertoire as far as going into the next couple of weeks here. And again, you have questions or anything, feel free to reach out, and I do have my office hours.